Hello, I'm Jeanette Keynes from Jewelry Arts Inc. In this video, I'm going to show you how to bezel set a beautiful carved coral cabochon. Now, coral's fragile, carved makes it more fragile, so I'm going to show you how we kind of use a burnisher and a few of the setting tools to set it beautifully without breaking our stone. So I want to just show off this crazy beautiful carved coral. Look how beautiful that is. Now we've got a nice little stack ring, so we didn't do our bezel too high. But basically what we have to do is we're gonna have to put it in there and we have to try to figure out really what setting tool we can use, because we have to set it up against, you see that little edge right there? So probably we're gonna end up using the straight setter, which is very small to be able to get in those little spots. But basically we've got to put it in there, get the height right, and then let's look at it and we'll figure out what tool is the right tool. Which is more or less whatever tool we can fit in there. You know what I mean? Okay, so cut.
It is very good.
Of course it is, it's gorgeous. So this is at the right height. I'm gonna pull it out so that you can see. But basically we put in a 16 gauge wire and a little 30 gauge sheet to raise this up. Because here's the thing, we really can't and we don't want to set this bezel up on these petals. We're really setting it more like a rose cut, where it's that little rim right along the bottom that's actually gonna hold it. I think what we're gonna end up doing is using just the tip of the burnisher to get in to these little spaces right here. You see what I mean? Like this. I'm gonna have to move this over to the edge of this so that I can kind of get in there, because we can't really do this from the top. This has to be, and that's why I said before, like, we're gonna have to put it in there, get the right height, and then see what the right tool is. This is gonna work great. If things get really tight, this is a, shall we say, off-book usage of the unsetting tool. You can use that little curvy, you see what I mean? That little curvy point to get into little spots like that. We're gonna start with this. Let me move this around and then I'll demo how we're gonna do it. Because in case for those of you who don't know, coral is very fragile. I think it's like a 2, which is very fragile. So we're going to do this gently and lovingly. Something else we might want to think about is it might be worthwhile adding a little glue. Glue is not something that you use because you're like, fuck this, I'm not setting my stones. Glue is well, that's not something we would do. We would never do such a naughty thing. Glue is something that you use on fragile stones, sometimes opals, when you're like, okay, like I'm gonna set it, of course, but I don't really have the ability to really get in there and maybe squish it as much as I want. So what you would do in that case is we would add a tiny bit of glue and set immediately, so that together the glue with what the setting, how much of the setting you've done, together will hold it in place, kind of a thing. So I think that's worth considering, and I think we may indeed do that. But if you're ever gonna glue, you always want to have everything ready to go. The height right, your tools out, everything. You add a tiny bit of glue and you immediately start setting. Do you know what I'm saying?
On the inside of the bezel?
On the inside, yeah. Because the whole point of this is, if you let the glue dry, the glue is gonna hold the bezel away from the stone, which isn't what you want.
Right.
So it's one of those things that you literally have to be ready to, like, you put the glue in and you start setting immediately. Okay? So we're gonna pull it out. Oh, let me pull it out so you can see what's on the inside. And you see, we put a wire in there, and we didn't really bother polishing up our sheet because this is opaque and you won't see it through there. But that's what's holding it up at the right height. Okay? So I'm gonna move this thing around. We're gonna discuss whether we're gonna use glue or not, and then we'll reconvene. My cinematographer, she makes all the decisions.
What's under that?
It's an old postcard. I think it's just,
Right, there's a little...
there it is. Princess and the Pea. So I took this and moved it over to the side, because when I'm actually in here setting, which this is, I'm gonna have to be doing like this. So I needed to be able to access it from the edge right here. You'll see what I mean when I do it. And then I'll flip this around in here to get to the other side. So we have all the high-tech equipment that we need. We have an old postcard. We usually use toothpicks, but you can use a paper clip, something that you're gonna throw away when you're done. We use the 5-minute epoxy, the stuff right here, the stuff that you mix the two parts together. It holds really, really well. Now, an important part about this is that there needs to be an equal amount for it to really form the bond. So what I usually do is put the drops right next to each other, and then if one of them needs a little bit more, I can just add it. If you pile them right on top of each other, you might not get what you're going for. Somehow they always have slightly different viscosity, and like one comes out faster and one comes out slower. So I usually give it a sec. I look at that, like maybe I'll add a hair more to that, and then I think that'll be good. I mean, you don't have to get completely insane, but you really do want a 1-to-1 ratio. I mean, of course, our definition of completely insane may differ from most people's, but whereas like I go like that, I'm like, okay, that looks good. And you want to really mix it together really well because that creates the bonds. We're going to use a very tiny amount of glue, like super tiny. We also have a damp paper towel here ready to go, because if you get glue, if glue kind of like comes out and is anywhere you don't want it to be, wipe it off with a damp paper towel, no big deal. It's a very big deal if you only notice after you're done setting and the glue has dried, because then to get it off is a major issue with solvent, and then your setting would probably come undone and all bad things. So pay attention and have a damp paper towel ready to go. And here's the thing too, a lot of times when people are thinking about gluing a setting, they stick it on the bottom. That's not really gonna help us. All that usually will do is possibly glue the stone to like your shiny silver or whatever. You wanna put the glue on the side, like tiny little dots, so that as we set the bezel and it presses in, you've got like extra connections on the side. Okay? So, put a little right there. Generally speaking, like however much you're thinking of adding, add like way less. Because when you press the stone in there, it will kind of spread out, and you just really don't want a whole lot of glue coming out of there. But if it does, just make sure you wipe it off right away and you'll be fine. Okay, so I'm gonna do that. Put this up here so that I don't stick my arm in it. Not that I've ever done that. Where you just go. And I'm pressing gently because this is not very hard stone. Like I was saying before, it's a 2. And it has this funny little end right here, which is very naughty. So we're not gonna start with that. Just like with soldering, we're gonna start in the good spots. Okay, so I'm gonna hold it in place. I've got my burnisher, got my finger right in there like so. So basically I'm going in all those little spaces, and you see how I am pressing in? So we're gonna end up with a little bit of a sort of ripply setting. We're gonna make sure it's very beautiful. And you notice how I have my hands very braced as I'm doing this? Let me flip this around. And just a reminder, this is the kind of thing you cannot do if you're going to get distracted in the middle. You know what I'm saying, with the glue. Like you can't like go and take a phone call or whatever. You got to work on it as much as possible. You see how I'm
very gentle burnishing.
Yes. Because in spots like this, you see how I'm kind of like pinching it in a little? Because this area right here is a little funky. Because it doesn't have the same kind of rim as the rest of it does. So I'm going to, see that how I'm just using that to kind of press that in and fill that space. Because you can't quite just run it along flat. So I'm going to do both. I'm basically pressing in those little spots and then going a little side to side. Because you see, I mean, it's not in there like rock hard, but it's holding, which is what we want. So I'm going to flip it around again. And basically I'm going to keep going, doing this gently and lovingly until it's as closed as we can get it. Because like you see, it's not done, but it's getting there.
Right.
Okay. And setting something like this, I'm not gonna lie to you, this is not something you wanna attempt when like this is your second stone that you're setting, just because it's fragile and you gotta be gentle with it. That's why we're doing it as a demonstration. I mean, it's not done yet, but like, look how beautiful that is. Oh, so gorgeous. And also, as I'm doing this, I'm looking to make sure I don't see any glue coming out, which I have not seen any yet, but you just have to stay alert. In that little spot right there. You see what I mean? How I'm almost making like little crimperoos right there?
But on this side, you didn't really.
I did it some, but not as much.
Right.
Basically, I'm going in as much as I can to create the ripples and also just that side to side kind of. Basically, I'm trying to get as much of the bezel as tight up against there as I can possibly manage. Now, we could have also done a prong setting with this. Although honestly, I think the bezel is a little prettier, to be honest with you, but it would have sort of the same general concepts of be very gentle, and it would just be holding it in those little places. And you know, I almost never set just with a burnisher, but this is just one of those weird things where this is just that nice curved, shiny surface to be able to get in that little space, you know? So take a look from the top. Like I said, I'm still going, but you see what's happening, how it's getting those nice little ripples. Isn't that nice?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We can also make a special tool to get into spots like this, but usually I can find something in here because there's lots of different shapes to fit in there. God, somebody so smart must have designed that set. Yeah, that really looks nice. I'm gonna keep screwing around with it, but for the most part, it's done. Take a look.
Yeah, it's really.
I mean, I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna fill every little tiny space that I possibly can, that with the glue, but pretty much what you're seeing there is 90% of what you're gonna see. Doesn't that look good?
Lovely.
And cut. It doesn't have to be in here, but I'm just saying, don't like wear it for so I'll tell all of you at the same time.
Tell everyone.
So, I could keep fiddling with this, and I'm sure there's like a molecule here or a molecule there that I could obsess for a very long time. But that looks absolutely fantastic. And what I was just saying is that when you glue something, even though this is 5-minute epoxy, I really usually try not to wear it for a day. Just let the glue completely harden up and whatever. You know, have I worn it before? Yes, but I think probably the safest practice is just to wait for a day. Just take it out of here though. Because like if I'm gluing a pearl or something, a lot of times I'll just put it in a third arm, you know what I mean, and just let it sit. But I just wanted to take it out. I mean, I'm gonna just
Casually slip it on.
I'm just gonna casually slip it on.
Beautiful.
And just treat it lovingly and gently. It's a fragile piece, but life is meant to be lived. So I say go nuts, you know what I mean? And look how nice it looks from the side. Like we could probably polish the side maybe a tiny bit or fool around, but honestly, I think it looks pretty darn
I
good.
did polish it at home
Yeah.
a little bit. Just
So-
a little. It's beautiful.
I mean,
Thank you so much.
and because we're using the burnisher, it's got a shiny edge already. So
Right.
like I said, you could play around with it, but I don't really think it needs anything.